All right, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to Deliver It. This is an Agile Product Owners podcast. My name is Cory Bryan, and that is Kim Andrikaitis.
That is Kimberly Andrikaitis. I have a present for you.
You do?
I do.
What is it?
Hang on.
Okay.
I'm giving it to you right now.
Oh, God.
Look.
I don't. What did you bring me?
I brought you a present.
You brought me neon window markers.
Yes. Remember last time we were talking and you were talking about how much you love to write on windows?
Yes.
So I came across those at the Target store. And as you can see,
they're on clearance.
They were on clearance. Well, that's the only way I was going to buy them for you. You thought I was going to actually pay full price? No.
You spent $3.14 plus tax.
Yep. So there's a lime green and
wow.
bright pink.
And a pink.
An orange.
And an orange and a yellow. Thank you very much.
Yes.
That's weird.
I know. I bought myself the same ones, and then I bought one for another PO friend of mine. And I used them today, and I have to tell you, they suck.
All right, so not a good.
It wasn't a really good gift.
Confidence for
it wasn't a very good
not
gift.
Not a good gift,
but it was. I saw them. I thought of you.
Well, thank you for thinking of me.
You're welcome.
And I'll find something to do with them.
Yeah, just put them in the garage sale pile.
I don't want to do that. I really don't.
Give them to one of your other product owners. Be like, here, I have this for you.
Yeah.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
So you can write on your own windows.
I like writing on windows.
I know. The yellow doesn't work very well at all. Anyway.
What else is happening? I didn't get you anything, by the way.
That's okay.
You surprised me with this.
I know. I like surprises. See, if I told you about it ahead of time, then it wouldn't have been a surprise.
That's true. I would have been less
surprised. Surprise.
Anything else going on?
So, let's see. Last week was a good one.
Yes.
At work, I spent the entire week in a daily workshop with our internal users. So basically, we've been working on a product to replace the current one that they've been using. And up to this point, we've only given demos. So they hadn't had the time to actually use the application. So we spent all of last week every day in a workshop, and we were able to observe them using the app and seeing how,
oh, nice.
Yeah, and determining kind of ways that we can enhance efficiencies. And we had a lot of good back and forth conversation, and I captured a number of stories, and it was just, I think it was a really good experience overall for all of us.
Were your developers in there when they did that?
Every once in a while, I'd pull a developer in, but they didn't have the time to sit there for 6 to 8 hours a day.
I always find that's interesting when you see people who created something, because half the time they don't use it.
Right.
They don't even know what the user is going to do with it. But when you see the frustration sometimes that comes with the user actually using your app, it tends to get you a little bit more involved.
Yes.
Go, oh, somebody's actually using this? Damn.
There were definitely some instances when I watched how they used it, and I'm just like,
don't do that.
Gosh, this is horrible. We really need to improve this. But it was a good experience, and that's what Agile's all about, right? Is making it better.
That's right.
That's what's been going on with me.
And also, you are now a certified Scrum Master.
I am.
How about that?
Whoop,
Product
whoop.
owner / Scrum Master.
Yes, I am now CSM certified.
Very good.
I know, that was exciting. So I took the class over the weekend. It was very quick. I got certified in a matter of minutes. Sent back my test scores, and I got a little certificate. I printed it up, and now it hangs all over the house. It's printed 25 copies and put them everywhere.
Very nice.
Yeah, so that was pretty exciting.
And did you get your product owner cards?
I did.
All right.
So check it out. I actually brought both sets with me.
Both sets.
Yes, because one was for product owners, and then the other one was for retrospectives.
Oh, okay.
So the first one here, and just a reminder, these cards, the point of them is just to have you think about things. They ask you questions for you to contemplate on and maybe talk to your team about and figure out where you can maybe identify gaps or anything like that. So I'm going to ask you, Cory, to go ahead and pull out a card, any card.
Any card.
Just pick one. Yep.
It's fantastic.
Awesome.
All right.
You don't want that card. Put another one in.
What was wrong with that one?
This is the card that explains what the cards do.
Uh-huh.
These coaching cards are meant to be prompts for when you were thinking about how to approach an upcoming retrospective.
Okay.
All right, Cory, try coming up with at least 7 different ideas before deciding on anything in order to encourage creativity.
7 different ideas.
Yes.
About anything.
About anything.
I do that.
7?
Yeah.
That's a lot of ideas.
Well,
Who's got time for that?
so I'll give you a prime example.
Okay.
When we were trying to figure out the name of this podcast,
Oh my God. That's true.
I came up with a good, 150?
100 and some.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
We're the project I'm working on with our students at the university at NC State. Tried to come up with a new name, and I came out with about 50 names. And I wrote them all on the wall, and they were like, "What? Why do you have so many?" Because that's what it is. It's just a brainstorm.
That was good.
I like that.
That was really good.
Give me the product numbers. I'll let you pick
right.
one, and I'll ask you. Since they're purple.
Yes, they're purple. That way you can tell the difference
Inspect
between cards.
and adapt.com. Mm-hmm. Okay. What are we doing?
Here, I just picked a card.
All right.
Now you get to read it.
Hang on a second.
Sound out the words.
I can read. A great product owner is available, decisive, realistic, informed, visionary, empowered, negotiable. How could you be a little more negotiable?
So you're actually asking me for an answer.
The question is, at the bottom, how could you be a little more negotiable?
I mean, I would take negotiable as almost a flexible kind of a thing, whereas maybe just more open-minded to the ideas of other people instead of being stuck in my own ideas, which I could be every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Open to discuss things further.
Sure.
Yeah.
And not be so close-minded, like it's my idea. That's it. Not that I do that.
Not that, no.
No.
I was stumbled because there's the words there that I just read off are there in a line, and I was trying to figure out what acronym they were making up.
Is there an acronym?
It's ADRIVEN.
Let me see.
A driven.
A driven. There you go.
I guess. Okay. Those are fun.
Yay, cards. So I have to tell you, I got these cards, and the next day I had a retrospective.
Uh-huh.
My poor team. So I said, I've got these retrospective cards. I want to use them. And they're all like, what does that even mean?
God.
So I passed the deck around the table. I had them each pull one and then read it out loud and then discuss it. This is at the very beginning of the retrospective. So they dealt with it and they said, all right, fine. And they did it. And then at the very end, we had like 5 minutes left. And I was like, let's do it again. No. I'm like, come on, one more time. So we're going to make good use out of these cards, I think.
That's good.
Yes.
Well, that was fun.
Yes.
We'll have to try those out again.
So what's happening with you?
Well, I tell you, I don't write very well. I read a fantastic article, and I'm going to put it in the show detail links. There is an article on wired.com about the Disney Magic Bands and how that has fundamentally changed what the park experience is like at Disney World. Have you ever been to Disney World?
Yes, but what's a magic band?
So in Disney World, when you go to Disney World, you have to get your tickets, you have to
Yes.
get your fast passes, you have to get your meal tickets, you have to get all these things for the park. What they've done is they've taken all those things and put them on a little rubber wristband, kind of like a Fitbit or something like that, or a Nike Fuel Band.
Sure.
They put it on the wrist. It's got a radio. It's got a transmitter. It's very basic. It's very innocuous, basically. But it gives you access to all those things, so you don't have to carry all that stuff around. But there's a fantastic article talking about when they started this about 5 years ago, the development of the product and how it integrates with everything. The article goes through a conversation. So you're walking to dinner, or you're going to walk to dinner. You made a reservation. You already picked out what you wanted, food-wise, online. They've got a little app for that. But you walk up and you cross this moat for this restaurant, and as you're walking up, the hostess greets you by name. Hi, Miss Andrikaitis. Your table, sit anywhere. How did they know I was here? The Magic Man. You go find a table somewhere in that restaurant you want to sit. Anywhere. Nobody guides you there. You just find a seat. 5 minutes later, the food shows up. How did they know you were? Magic bands, triangulation, data, right? Everything is driven by your magic band, but it's so innocuous. It's so basic. You don't even know it's there. And that's the point of the technology and what they were trying to get at and why it fascinated me. Because all these things you have to do when you go to Disney, and I go to Disney about every 5 years. I haven't been with that system yet. But we have to get fast passes so we can ride Space Mountain. So we have to dash. So we have to get in the park, and we have to go get the fast passes. And then we have to do other things and come back at the time. And we have to go see Ariel, or we have to go see What's the girl's name from Frozen? I can't remember. One of the characters. Elsa, yes.
Let it go, Cory.
But you have to run everywhere to do all these things. And with the Magic Band, you don't have to do that. All that stuff is figured out for you or lets you do that. Basically, the concept was it gets the experience of going to the park out of the way so you can just enjoy the park. And I love a lot of the things they talked about. Things like acclimating quickly to new technology when it's delivered and when it works better than you think it would be, or it works without you thinking about how does it work. It just works, which is amazing. The fact that when you go and swipe the Magic Band to get like a ride or something like that, and it bings and you're green, so that means you're good. There's never a red indication because red means something went wrong, and nothing can go wrong at Disney World.
No.
So if it doesn't work, it goes blue. Or a different little hum and it goes blue. Never red. I love that. Nothing can go wrong at Disney World, right? They said that future things they're looking at for the technology. So if you're standing in a line for a long time, it can sense that and send you a coupon for an ice cream or a coupon for a ride to go on it again as soon as you get off or something like that. So it basically takes those negative experiences that you're having because it has the data in real time and turns it into a positive experience and ways it can do that. Again, amazing things that you can do as an experience with your product to make your users happy. Really like that part. And then it talked about getting themselves out of the way. You know, how can we remove ourselves? How can we make them have meaningful choices? A lot of the things that were seen as choices weren't really choices. It was just more things they had to select, but they didn't mean anything. So several times in your application that you're developing or several times in a workflow that you have, there's choices that the user shouldn't have to make, but you're making them make them so that they can get to the thing they really want to do. What if you just let them to do the thing they wanted to do? And then that's a meaningful experience. And I really like that. It's the reason I dislike passionately the Coca-Cola machines, the machines that have the touch screen where you pick like one of 126 combinations because there's too many choices. It's great that you have those choices, but several times you see people standing in front of them and it's kids and people who aren't familiar with the technology. Usually it's older people that don't know how to operate it. And they're stuck. They don't know what to do, or they don't know what to choose. Or if it's a little kid, then they pick 6 of those things, and I just want my drink. That's all I want. But it's just the choice, that powerful thing of using choice wisely and making meaningful ones. That's great. And the way they talked about the design was interesting too, because the band is innocuous. It doesn't look like anything special. It's just gray, or it's got a little color. It's got a little Mickey symbol on it. It's mundane in its look, but in its functionality, how it actually works with the thousands of systems that drive that and let them see all the data. So they know, the park knows where people are at in the park and whether they need more food at this restaurant or they need more employees as people leave the park for traffic. All that's real-time data, and all that's based on that very simple little technology that's meant to make the park goers experience a whole lot better. I love that.
That's really interesting.
I love that article.
That sounds like a good article.
I've read it 4 times.
Now I kind of want to read the article.
Well, I told you to read it before.
I didn't want to. I want to be surprised. See, I like
I didn't get you
surprises
markers.
too. You didn't get me markers,
but that's really cool. I really like that. So yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. Definitely give that a read.
How long was that article?
It's pretty long.
Yeah.
It's not a book, but it's pretty long. But I really liked it.
That sounds really interesting.
And the only other thing I got going on is I'm giving a talk at the Agile RTP meeting on April 7th at the new MetLife building here in Cary. It's a talk I've been working on for a little while, but it's the first time I've actually decided to give it. It's about measuring success as a product owner. So several times, actually, when we were working on the project we were working on together, am I doing the right thing? Which area do I need to focus on first? And that's why I started that. And it's really been helpful to me over the last couple of projects I've been on to say, is this going right? Is it going wrong? In which way is it going wrong? And which areas do I need to really focus on? So.
Yeah, and you shared the presentation with me, and you talked about it a little bit. And I think that the information that you gave is really helpful information. And after your talk, I would strongly encourage you to add that to our links, if you can do that.
We may talk about it in the show. Yeah, I definitely put it on my blog site, and that's where it came from, was a couple of blog posts, and I put it in the presentation. But I definitely think it's something we'll talk about, because that is one of the topics we want to talk about, is how do you know if you're doing a good job as a product owner.
Or a bad job.
Yeah, or a bad job. Yes, equally.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. We're going to be there to support you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So today we're going to talk about backlogs.
Backlogs.
All the backlogs.
You were very excited about this.
Because I tell you why. Because if I'm on a new project, or if I'm trying to advise somebody on the most important thing you can do, it's get your backlog together. It doesn't have to be in a story format. It should be. I'd like it to be. But it doesn't have to be. What's important is, here's the list of everything that somebody's asking us to do. Here it is. If it's 100 things, if it's 1,000 things, whatever it is, here's the list. Make that public. Make it visible. Make it so other people can see that when you say, we have these things to do, they see them. It's not hidden. So the backlog's always the first thing I want to do on a new project is, what are people asking me to do? Mm-hmm. If it's a list of requirements, fine. Put on a list of requirements. But that's all it is a list of all the work that you need to do on the project, but everything that needs to get done. So I usually categorize the backlog. I put 3 different things on my backlog, or I categorize them as 3 different things. Business things, so the business stories or things the business has asked for. Technical features or technical debt items, anything technical the team needs to do, whether it's refactoring or new databases or hardware or anything else, research spikes, anything like that. And then any defects that we've got in the product. Those are the 3 general categories I have for stuff like that. But it could be anything. It could be functional items. It could be non-functional items. It could be requirements. Anything like that. So it all goes in the backlog.
Do you actually tag those items within those categories?
I like to, yeah. So when I've used tools like Jira before, or I've used tools like looked at Rally or looked at Trello or something like that, you can label those things, or you can set them up as specific types. So this is a story, this is a defect, this is a technical story, this is a business story. Definitely would do that, yes.
That's what I do. We have them as types. So I'm able to quickly look and see. I mean, I'll usually know if it's a defect versus technical story versus a user story. But what I do too is I categorize them according to, I pretty much group them according to module or page, because we've got so many different stories and so many different areas that are being touched that if I didn't do it that way, I think it would just be a big mess.
Yep.
But that's what I do.
I like it.
Yeah.
And how often does it change?
Constantly.
All the time.
All the time. I mean, it's a living artifact, and it survives for the length of the product. So they're not static. You know, they shift and they morph, and it's in response to requirements analysis or team meeting outcomes, or, you know, even just present it with any sort of surprises. That's my word of the day, by the way.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Okay. Surprise backlog. Yeah, I often update my backlogs. When we have a grooming session, we'll go back and I'll update it. When I have a meeting with a customer, if something needs to be updated, I'll update it. Definitely do it at the end of every sprint. Definitely do it at the end of every release. And anytime we go through any roadmap exercising, I always go through and add things to the backlog.
I touch that backlog 80% of my day. I'm always in the backlog, making sure that it's up to date, that, you know, we don't have duplicates, because people will put in stories that are already there. So I'm trying to make sure that it's well organized and that it's kept current. And then whenever someone comes to me and says, do we have a story for XYZ? I know immediately, yes, we do, or no, we don't.
Yeah. This is the biggest visible thing, I think, to your clients as to what you're working on.
But do your clients look at your backlog?
I don't mind that.
But do they do that?
Oh, do they do that? I've had some that did. Yeah. And it didn't bother me because it helped them prioritize things, really, when you're looking at this. And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yep. So the backlog, we just talked about how it's constantly changing. It's also PO owned. So, you know, anyone can contribute, but in my world, my QA person, she writes stories and she writes defects, and my developers will write technical stories, and I'll write the rest. But at the end of the day, the backlog, it's mine, and I'm responsible for keeping it ordered and maintained. So ultimately it's mine to manage, and I take great ownership in my backlog, and it's hands off my backlog. Don't be moving things around.
Yeah.
You know, you can feel free to add stories, but don't mess with the ranked order of where they sit. Now, I've done that to you once.
Yes, you did.
And you were very upset with me.
Well, yes.
So just to let our listeners know, we have, is it Trello that we use?
Yeah, we use Trello
and
for the show backlog.
For the show backlog. So we have cards that talk about different subject matter of what we're going to have in the show. And I went in one day and they just seemed completely out of order. So I updated the whole order. I think there were probably 30 or 40 of them.
Yeah, there was about 30.
And I put them in alphabetical order because I have a slight touch of OCD. And then Cory sends me a message and says, "What happened to the order?" And I said, "Well, they're now in alphabetical order."
Yeah, because I had grouped things with, these are people we'd like to interview at some point, or these are topics that are kind of grouped around the same thing that maybe we can split off certain things. And they were in an order that I knew of.
I didn't know about the order.
But you didn't know about the order.
He didn't communicate the order to me.
That's my problem.
That was a communication problem.
Yes. But yes, the product owner, whoever the product owner is.
See, in our case, we're both the product owners.
I know.
So, but I wasn't really thinking rank.
But it's okay. I fixed it.
You did fix, and I haven't touched it since.
But the point is, we definitely don't want customers or developers going into our backlogs and moving things around willy-nilly.
No.
We talk to people and we understand the ordering of these things, and we should be the ones that put them in that order.
That's right.
Yeah. So a product backlog is the one that everybody talks about. However, I think there are also some other types of backlogs we can talk about. Mainly the release backlog. So if we know we're working on a product backlog and we're going to carve off a bit of work to do in this release, then we can carve off a couple stories and put it into, this is what we're working on for this release. So let's say we have 4 sprints for a release. These are the stories we think we're going to work on in that release. We'll go ahead and carve them off, and that'll be our release backlog. And we can burn up the stories and we can do whatever, but we know that's kind of what our target is. Same thing with the sprint backlog. We know these are the things we're going to work on in the sprint. If you're working with a team that can get through a good number of stories in a sprint, then you kind of need that. If your team only goes through a few stories in a sprint, then you probably don't. But everybody knows what you're working on that sprint or that release or in the future. And that's why you have those backlogs. Sometimes you can do them as 3 separate backlogs, but really they're the same stack, basically. I've seen it where the sprint is the very top. You pull that off. The release is the top third or something like that. And then the product backlog is just the whole thing.
So what we do for a release is we just tag it with the release number on the story itself or the work item itself. And then what I do in terms of the sprints is I typically have the current sprint. I have the backlog for that, what they're working on. And then I usually have 1 or 2 sprints after that following what's going to come next, so that if they're ready for a stretch, I can just pull in a story from the next sprint. And that way I know that I'm running ahead of the team because the work that's in the sprint backlogs are groomed and they're done.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to have any surprises when they say, "I'm done with work. What can I work on?"
Yes.
And I say, "Oh, you can work on this next thing." And now
Here's the
we're
next
a
couple
little
of
bit
things.
ahead of schedule. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
I agree.
And a lot of people refer to this as the iceberg model, where, you can see the top of the iceberg, but you never know really what's underneath. So the finer grain things, the stories, the well-groomed stories and the estimated stories are up top because those are the ones you're going to pick next. And then the epics and the things that are further down and not as refined are down at the bottom. They're big chunks of stories or features that you're going to work on. So finer grain up top, bigger, fatter items down on the bottom.
Right. And not only that, but we talked about this before, is that the backlog should be ordered by rank. So it's from the most important to the least important. So that just kind of piggybacks on what you just said.
Yeah. I'm fine with people putting priority, giving me a priority for a feature or a story. I'm fine with people giving me a severity for a feature or a story or defect for that matter. But realistically, where does this fit in the stack rank order? Is this number 1? Is this number 6? Don't give me 60 highs, because my first question is going to be, what's number 1 of those highs?
That's right.
What's number 2 of those highs? And keep going that way. You really have to make your customers think about what is most important to them or what delivers the most value, because there may be a medium priority story that delivers the most value, and that's what we should do first.
That's right.
So priority and severity, they can keep them if they want them. I will let them have them, but I pay more attention, and that's how the backlog gets ordered is rank order.
And that's difficult to pinpoint because everyone wants to say they're all high, work on everything. I want all of them done.
Yeah. But they can't have that.
Well, great, but I don't, if we have 20 stories, I don't have 20 developers to work on all 20 stories simultaneously.
Well, and that's part of the job of the product owner, is to help them understand that these are what we can do and these are what we can't do. And which ones do you want to go first, second, third, fourth? So again, that stack rank, I think, is a great tool to help them do that. I've seen some people do it with money. So it really talks about value, but I've seen people say, okay, let's say you had $1,000. How much would you pay for this feature? How much would you pay for this feature out of that $1,000? And go down and so forth. And that can help lead to ranking of things, because if you've got high, medium, lows and they put all their money on mediums, do that one first.
Right.
That's what they value.
That's an interesting one. I haven't done that yet.
No. Sometimes we have estimates on stories. Either we do point estimates or we do t-shirt sizes or something like that. And those go on the backlog. With the stories, a lot of people like to estimate epics or estimate themes. And that's okay, because it gives you kind of a rough estimate, a rough idea of how big that thing is. But they don't have to be on there, but they can be.
So I make sure that my stories that are going to be included in the sprints, whether it's this next coming sprint or the sprint that they're in, they all have story points assigned to them.
Mm-hmm.
The items that are a little bit, lower down the ranked order, because we haven't gotten to them, they haven't been groomed, they obviously don't have points.
Right. Yeah. The more likely you are the more likely you are to pick something up, the more it should have some kind of estimate on it.
Exactly. Because we need to understand as POs how much work our team can do and what the average velocity is, and does this fit in the velocity, and et cetera, et cetera. So story points are very important. Yes.
And then grooming the backlog. So we mentioned, you're always touching the backlog. You're always doing that at different times. The activities you're actually doing on those backlog, I think, is important. So you should be inserting stories. You should be adding to your backlog. You should be removing stories from your backlog.
Yes.
Pruning it of things that either you don't need anymore or you found a new way to do it. So several times I've had an idea on the backlog that was on there for a little while, and then we came up with something else. So we wrote a new story, got rid of that one, or we just changed that one, whichever one made more sense. Refining stories, so that's where you're getting to story grooming, and you're actually going back and continually updating your backlog. Reprioritizing, again, every time you talk to a customer, every time you talk to your team, every time you look at what's being delivered, you can actually reprioritize your backlog to get the most important thing up to date. And then deleting. So there's several times where I've removed things into what I called a cold storage type.
Didn't you have a category called frozen?
I did have a frozen. Yes.
Back to Elsa again.
Yeah, back to Elsa.
Right.
And the reason the reason I did that is because several times you work with customers or clients or businesses that don't want to throw anything away. They're very tied to, well, this is the list of things we must have and you must do them. Yeah, but I'm not going to do it for 2 years. I'm not going to do it for a long time, and I may not even get to it realistically.
By the time they remember it, the project's done.
That's basically my way of saying no.
Right.
Is let's put it in this backlog because that's where it'll live forever. And, it's frozen. It's not going anywhere.
No.
But really, you should say no and trash it.
I'm all about deleting it.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, all right, delete. Not even close and keep, just delete. Just get rid of it.
So that's one of the things we do have on here is how many things do you have on your backlog?
Right. So we talk about, not the world. We don't want everything. We want 100 to 200 limit is what I think we've agreed on. And I mean, we don't want it to become the dumping ground.
Yes.
And no one wants to waste time creating work items that are never going to be actioned.
Yeah. That's the thing that I always want to say to customers and try to find better ways to say is, I understand you want this, and I understand you want it at some point. And at some point, we can add it to the backlog. And if this is something that we're not going to work on for the next 6 months, let's just leave it off. Or let's put it into some frozen backlog, or let's just leave it on the floor for right now. And who knows, in 6 months, we may have a better idea completely of what we want to do. So, yeah, saying no, not having more than a couple hundred items, stories, epics, that type of thing is what we're talking about. 100, 200 of those. You're going to have tasks. You're going to have defects, but you don't want to have too many things on there because as a product owner, I like to kind of know what's on my backlog. I like to know that these things are coming or these things are being worked on. If it gets too big, I don't know my backlog.
Right. I mean, it's so easy to say, yeah, just add it to the backlog, or we'll add it to the backlog just to shut them up. It's very easy to do that. But ultimately, we're just creating extra work for ourselves.
Yes, because you have to touch it, the backlog, every time, and you have to move around that story. Oh, there's that story we're never going to do.
There's that story again. There's that story. And we all have that story.
Yes.
Or a dozen of those stories.
Yes.
Like, oh, there it is. We're never going to touch it, but I'm leaving it just to shut them up when they say, I'd like to have blah.
Because when they look at the backlog, they're going to say, where's that story?
There it is.
Yeah.
You need to rank it.
I had it wasn't the exact same thing, but it was basically a list of things on one project where it was, here's a list of all the defects on the project. And it was thousands long. And I got really good at slicing it into filters, and here's how we can look at things for this release, and here's how things we can look at this status or whatever you want like that. But it was always thousands. And I always made when I started the meeting, because I ran the meeting, I always made the point of starting the meeting with that 800, 1,000 item list on the screen for everybody to see. So they know how many things are on there. And every time we would go through that meeting, we'd go, yeah, just put it there. Yeah, just put it there. We never deleted anything. It was just insanity because the list kept growing. And for the years that I kept doing that, that list just kept growing. So even more reason, keep it small.
Yes.
Keep it in your head so that you know where these things are in relation to each other. And keeping it around 1 to 200 really lets you do that.
I think the end result, the net result of this conversation is don't neglect your backlog. Keep it neat.
Yes.
Keep it tidy.
Yes.
I mean, you wouldn't stop brushing your teeth or taking a shower just because you were lazy. You wouldn't. No, you wouldn't, Cory. So we want to keep our backlog nice and groomed and fresh and so clean.
Fresh and clean.
So fresh and so clean.
It's an Irish Spring.
I just quoted an Outcast song, and you didn't even pick up on
Well,
that.
See, you do songs, I do movies. And you notice I haven't done any movies.
They always fly right over you just completely ignore them at this point.
That's true. It's probably for the best. One other thing, or a couple other things about the backlog. We talked about grooming the backlog. One of the really cool projects that I did, we had a FedEx Day or an Innovation Day, and I had some developers that wanted to work on the new technology, and I gave them an idea that they implemented, which was really cool, which is basically on your backlog, if you know your velocities and you've gotten to the point where you can calculate your velocities and predict basically what you're going to be able to do, I had them take that velocity and take some calculations that I gave them and told them to give me a visual representation about my backlog for the next release. So what that amounted to was on my product backlog, on my 100 or so items, they colored in the first section of my lowest velocity, calculated velocity, in green. So those were the things in the backlog that we were confident was going to get done next release. There was a section between my low estimate and my high estimate on velocities that was yellow that said we may get to some of these things. And then there was a line that was red below it that said, this is stuff that we've never been able to do at our current velocity, or this is stuff we would never be able to do at our current velocity. So when you looked at that backlog like that, what you had was basically your release plan. You had the green ones definitely in. The yellow ones, some of them. The red ones, don't even ask. Now, we can reprioritize that list, and then those greens and yellows move around because of your story estimates. But that was so cool when you had a high-functioning team, and you had velocities, and you had estimates, and you had all the things that you really should have, or you should work to have in that list, and you need to give a visualization of where you're at in your backlog. That was really cool, and super dope.
Yeah, and those developers were rock stars.
Yes.
I remember that. That was a very cool thing that they put out.
Yeah, and we used that. I think I used it for like 3 releases, that actual tool
good.
For planning.
Did they
purposes.
know that? Did you tell them that you used it?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes, but it was very cool. But that's another thing with that you can do with your backlog is you can use it to actually do your release planning. And there's a great way that Mike Cohen does a 90% confidence calculation for velocities that we'll go over when we talk about velocities.
Velocity.
But it was very cool. All right. Backlogs. Any other questions about backlogs or any ideas or thoughts?
No. I think, again, we've pretty much exhausted the backlog.
Okay. Again, I think it's one of the most important things you can do as a new product owner or a product owner on a new project is just get your backlog together, get it out there, get it visible, and then start rearranging stuff on it because that's what you need to do.
Take pride in your backlog.
Yes. Take pride.
Take pride.
In the backlog.
That's right.
All right.
So what else?
Now you read something.
Oh, so we want to get feedback from our listeners as always. So everyone out there, if you've got questions, if you have any problems you're facing in the PO space, if you want to share some ideas for improvement, you have any issues with Cory, not me, of course, but any issues with Cory or the show itself, contact us. Yes,
you can find us online at deliveritcast.com, on Twitter at deliveritcast, and you can email us at deliveritcast@gmail.com. We have a question this week.
Yay!
That I'll ask you.
Okay.
So I've been working with a couple folks here talking about product ownership and learning more. Mary asked the question. One of the things that I had mentioned to her early on was having the product owner write the acceptance criteria in the gherkin format. Given that not all stories will be authored by the PO, for instance, the stories geared more toward technical debt, how does this play out? Does the product owner own the acceptance criteria on all stories? Or is the person that writes the story responsible for the acceptance criteria and then validating it's met when the story is delivered? So Gherkin, for those of you who don't know, is the format that is used by Cucumber as an automation testing tool to kind of do the plain English test case is probably the best way to do that.
And the format is given, and then you fill in the blank, given when this thing happens. What's the next? I don't remember. It's been so long.
Given when.
Then.
Then, yeah.
Right. So the idea is that you'd say, given that I've clicked this button, when I navigate to this page, then a popover window appears, for example. So what I used to do is I use Gherkin, and I would actually write my acceptance criteria just normal, verify this, confirm that, verify this. And always my last one was verify that all test case scenarios in the attached file passes. And then I would attach a Gherkin file. So I would have a Word document, and in it I would contain all of my different test scenarios using the Gherkin structure. And that way it kind of covered me because I didn't have to write them all in acceptance criteria, but my last one was always make sure that these pass. And then what I would do is when it came to accepting the story, I would literally sit with the QA person and we would go through it together. So I knew that they were testing it, they knew I was accepting it, and we were able to talk directly with the developer if there were any issues or problems. In addition, I would look at that Gherkin file, I'd print it up, and during planning, I would have it out for all the team to review as well. So when they were looking at the story and they were looking at the acceptance criteria, they also had the ability to look at each one of those test case scenarios.
Yeah, it really is a way to improve as a product owner is to clearly think about how you want those acceptance criteria to be met with tests, and to do it in that Gherkin language, and to give the testers and the developers a kind of primer of here's some tests that we can think about writing for this. And then the testers can come in, fill in some details, and they'll also expand on it. They'll write more tests and they'll expand on your test ideas. And it really is a good idea and a good way to improve your communication with the team.
What I loved about it, at first I was very dismissive of it and reluctant to do it because I thought it was going to take so much time.
You did not want to do it.
I did not want to do it. And Mary Thorne was the one. Shout out to Mary Thorne.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Thorne was the one that convinced me to give it a try. And I'm glad she did because it really didn't take that long to write because a lot of it was copy and paste. But what it really made me do was think about all of the different scenarios, the negative scenarios, the edge cases. What if there's, permissions? What if someone doesn't have a particular role? What happens when they go into? So it really made me think about all the different scenarios, and it was very challenging, kind of thinking about all of them. But then I would review them with the team, and they would get involved, and then they would have ideas. And, oh, you forgot this, and let's include that, and it ended up becoming a really good team exercise.
Yeah. So if you can do it as a product owner, if you can start writing some of those acceptance tests or criteria as tests And you can do it in the language you have, whatever it is. If it's Gherkin, if it's whatever else, it really helps a lot.
Let's find a link and add it to our page for Gherkin. So if
Okay.
people are interested in writing some test cases using Gherkin, they can follow the structure.
Sure.
And I think there's a couple websites that describe it pretty plain and simply.
Okay.
So let's do that.
And we'll put a link in there.
Did you write that down?
I wrote that down. All right. Anything else about that? And I think we did talk about acceptance criteria in episode 2 on stories, where we talked about the fact that anybody can write the stories. The product owner needs to make sure that there is acceptance criteria on there. So if you can get, like I said, if you can get a customer to write a story, help them write the acceptance criteria, or write the acceptance criteria with them so that they see the whole process, not just a story. But yes, the product owner has to make sure there's some type of acceptance criteria, whether it's for a technical story, research spike, a business story, and some of that can be then translated into Gherkin and test files.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was a good question, Mary.
I like that. More questions. Keep them coming.
Keep them coming.
All right. Anything else? Anything else going on?
Not at the moment.
Okay. We don't know what we're going to talk about next time, do we?
You know, I was thinking maybe we should talk about story grooming.
Story grooming.
The actual...
Or story discovery if you're in the UK.
Sure.
Because
That's
there's
right.
negative connotations.
Story discovery. I thought maybe that would be a next logical step to discuss what the meeting's all about, time boxing, story pointing, that kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
It's a good idea.
Thanks.
We'll definitely look and see if you have suggestions, or you want to learn something, or if you have a suggestion for a topic, reach out and let us know, and we'll see what we can do.
We'll put it on our backlog.
We will put it
Cory
on our
will
backlog.
rank it, and I won't touch it.
We can only hope that's true.
It's not in alphabetical order.
So our disclaimer, here we go. These words are our own and are not endorsed or representative of any company or organization. Yet. Still waiting. We'll see what happens. You can find me at @iscorybryant on Twitter, and I infrequently blog at don'tyellatme.wordpress.com.
And as usual, I can be reached through the show's contact info.
There you go. And that is episode 3 delivered. Thank you very much for joining us today. We will see you next time.
We'll talk next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.